Extortion is up 330% since the Liberals took office. It has been a fundamental failure of their governance to allow extortion to not only flourish, but to skyrocket. This is a problem that affects communities across Canada, particularly in my home province of British Columbia. Conservatives have put forward many common sense proposals, including a private member's bill by my colleague, our Deputy Leader, Tim Uppal. And let's not forget as well that the Liberals voted down that bill. They voted down previous discussion on Arpan Khanna's bill on jail, not bail. And they also made it easier for people who commit extortions to serve their sentence on house arrest. They gleefully repealed a mandatory minimum for extortion with a firearm. At the end of the day, we have an untenable situation. As a shadow minister for public safety, it's my view that the Liberals have completely failed when it comes to extortion. I'll now turn the floor over to my colleague and our Deputy Leader, Mr. Uppal.
Thank you very much, Frank. It is right that the Liberals have failed to keep Canadians safe. What we are seeing from right across the country, stories of families who have worked extremely hard, have put in their life savings into building up businesses, hiring Canadians, and they are now being punished for their success. They're receiving phone calls and being extorted for millions of dollars. Their homes are being shot at. Some homes have been burnt down. Families are forced to leave their homes, many times living separately apart. Some families have actually left the country. These are families who, an example in Edmonton, a family who has now had to leave their home. Pictures of their school's children was sent to them as well. And it's very unfortunate now that the Liberals are looking for others to blame, are playing politics with this, when it was the Liberals who brought in C-75 and C-5, which made it easier to get bail, which reduced sentences, and they also did not support legislation that Conservatives brought forward that would have helped this situation. One of those pieces of legislation was 381, my private member's bill, which would have brought in a mandatory minimum sentence for extortion, to bring in stricter penalties for extortion. We currently do not have a mandatory minimum sentence for extortion. This bill would have brought in 3 years for anybody convicted of extortion, 4 years if you're convicted using a firearm, which is something under C5 that was struck, that would have restored that, and 5 years if you were convicted in the case of organized crime, which is mostly what we are seeing across the country. So we call on the Liberals to work with us, to strengthen our laws, stop blaming, and let's change the laws to protect Canadians. I will now call on Arpan Khanna, Member of Parliament from Oxford, to discuss his bill.
Well, thank you, Frank, and thank you, Tim. It's quite disgusting to see the Liberal Party playing politics when Canadian lives are at stake. You know, we've seen in the last 10 years their soft on crime, catch and release laws have unleashed a crime wave right across our country. You know, families have been shattered. Communities are now living in fear. You know, this government is easy on criminals, giving them a free ride, but hard on Canadians and families. You know, every morning when we hear these devastating headlines of broad daylight shootings, of extortion calls, you know, families waking up, being extorted for millions of dollars. If they don't pay, their kids and their homes will be shot at. And these extortionists are targeting businesses. They're targeting people's homes. They're targeting media studios. And just recently, we've heard them targeting lawyers in Surrey, in British Columbia. In Surrey alone, we have had over 100 reported cases of extortion so far this year. And there's countless others that go by that are not reported. This is a crisis that the community is facing. And the sad reality is that Mark Carney was just in that neighborhood this weekend. Instead of meeting with victims, with their families, with business owners, and having a conversation with law enforcement, he decided to take a walk on the beach while eating donuts. He didn't have the human decency to show up and have conversations, to stand up for a community that is crying for help. I can tell you, Pierre Poilievre and our Conservative team, every single member that is standing here with us today has met with victims. And as Frank and as Tim have mentioned, Conservatives have taken action when the Liberals have failed. We brought in Bill C-381 last Parliament. Liberals voted against that. I tabled my Jail Not Bail Act that would put repeat violent offenders, including extortionists, behind bars. We brought a motion to fast-track that. Liberals voted that down as well. They talk about RCMP, but the Minister for Public Safety hasn't even hired a single new officer and says it's not his job. This Liberal government has let in 18,000 known criminals with serious convictions into our country with their reckless immigration policies, their open border policies, and without doing any background checks. Canadians are terrified and they want action. Conservatives have taken that action, while Liberals make excuses on extortions. Conservatives will bring in stronger self-defense laws. We will repeal Liberal bail that releases these extortionists on our streets. We will bring in minimum mandatory sentencing to put these repeat violent offenders behind bars where they belong, and we'll kick out any non-citizen who is convicted of serious crimes like extortion. And we've called for an emergency debate. Again, that's been blocked as well. So we're ready to take action, and we're happy to take any questions you might have today. Thank you.
Sir, the Supreme Court invalidated minimum sentences for a very famous case a few days ago. Are you willing to use the non-withstanding clause in order to bring forward your bills, basically?
Well, this is an area I know very well. I was a Crown prosecutor prior to going into politics, and I primarily prosecuted internet and sexual offences against children. I believe our leader, Pierre Poilievre, has been very clear on this issue.
Not on the non-withstanding clause.
No, I believe he actually has been very clear on calling for the government to use a notwithstanding clause on this decision.
Would more police resources to, say, Surrey Police be something that you are advocating for, the federal government should consider doing, given the Surrey Police is asking for that?
Well, at the end of the day, we can't forget that this is a government that has levied a budget with a $78 billion deficit. This is a government that loves its consultants but hates spending money where it's needed. The law enforcement, certainly, I sympathize with them because they don't always have the resources in the labs and things like that. This government has spent so much money on consultants and on boutique projects that there isn't that kind of money to go around, and for that they should be ashamed.
Do you think that there should be, the city of Surrey should get its ask of 150 more officers deployed to help with these extortions?
What I can say is that this government, when it comes to its spending priorities, has not prioritized law enforcement. It has prioritized its own initiatives, and at the end of the day, there aren't funds to even talk about these sorts of asks. And for that, again, I put the blame on the government.
Yesterday we had, after question period, a bunch of the Liberal MPs, coming out similar to right now, saying that if you guys want to take action on extortion, get behind them, support C2, especially the lawful access measures in there. Why not support that? And just what is the what's the barrier on the Conservatives' end to helping get C2 passed?
Well, at the end of the day, I don't think it's a barrier on the Conservatives' end. It's a barrier on Canadians' end. I'm not sure if you've read C2. It has sweeping measures in it. It seems to me that the Liberals didn't do their appropriate consultations with constitutional lawyers. Conservatives aren't opposed to appropriate, constitutionally compliant legislation. I don't believe that Parts 14 and Parts 15 were sufficiently consulted on in that regard. We are happy to work with the Liberals. In fact, in a lot of respects, we have done more work than the Liberals, even though they're in government here. So they want to have the discussion. Happy to have that discussion. We need laws that are constitutionally compliant, that balance privacy rights, but also strike through to deal with the mess that we have seen in the last 10 years of the Liberals.
So how do you balance some of those measures? Like, what specifically would the Conservatives want to see protections for? And there has been constitutional critics saying this will allow police to say, like, ask doctors, oh, is this person your patient? Is that something you'd want to see gone? Like, what specific things would you want to see reined back on the lawful access side?
Well, the lawful access side is governed by principles. The principles are the principles of privacy, principles of charter rights. You have to balance that with principles of law enforcement. And as conservatives, we believe that the two can coexist. It's my view that the Liberals didn't bear that in mind in drafting C2. And let's not forget, it was so bad that they had to split their bill, put it forward in C12 in regards to things that could pass, things that were palatable, and that's where we're left. If you want to talk about C2 and why it's failing, please talk to the Liberals. Thank you.
Thank you.